Where did all the workers go? These patterns are repeating across the high-income developed world: Germany, the UK, Japan, South Korea, Australia. Brett Swanson, guest writer, Collective Spark, reports. In a November 30th, 2022 speech on inflation in the labor market, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell blamed most of the 3.5 million estimated shortfall in the U.S. labor force on premature retirements. He also blamed a large portion, between 280,000 and 680,000, on long COVID. In a footnote, however, Powell acknowledged a far more sober factor: an estimated 400,000 unexpected deaths among working age people. It's easy to blame these deaths on COVID-19. The virus is, of course, one significant cause, but it's not nearly the only cause, especially among young and middle-aged workers. We need better government data transparency to make a full assessment. Until then, we can proceed with others who track mortality for a living, life insurance companies, for example. The Great Divide, 2020 versus 2021. In 2020, COVID-19 took many lives, even among selected groups of middle-aged people, specifically those with comorbidities such as diabetes. In 2020, COVID did not take very many lives of healthy young and middle-aged people. For example, the types of people who are employed at large and middle-sized companies and who have group life insurance. As you can see, group life insurance benefit payments in 2020 were barely higher than they were in 2018. In 2021, however, group life payments exploded by 20.7% over the 5-year average and by 15% over the acute pandemic year of 2020. Why would healthy young and middle-aged people suddenly begin dying in large numbers in 2021 when they navigated 2020 with relative success? Especially when we consider that in 2021, the U.S. administered 520 million COVID-19 vaccine doses. Shouldn't healthy people employed in good jobs with good benefits, now protected with vaccines, have fared better in 2021 than in 2020? Surely overdoses and suicides have risen in recent years, but these causes of deaths are less prominent among the group life cohorts in general, and the latest data confirms these were not drivers of the group life surge. Curiously, two of the largest spikes in 2021 came from deadly automobile accidents and non-automobile accidents. Millennial mortality. We can take a look at a few of these young adults, age groups, in more detail. In the charts, we've broken down total all-cause deaths into 3 groups: 30 to 34, 35 to 39, and 40 to 44. Eyeballing the age group charts alone shows the factors other than COVID-19 itself must have driven large portions of the mortality spike in young and middle-aged workers. We're using official statistics, which likely overstated COVID mortality, understated non-COVID mortality. It's the best we've got for now. The most important overall point is that in 2021, it was far worse for young and middle-aged people than 2020. Another key point is that 2022 was also worse than 2020, though not as bad as 2021. Mortality rates in 2022 were still dramatically higher than the pre-pandemic baseline. COVID-19 hit hard in 2020, especially for the old, vulnerable, and comorbid. In other words, COVID-19 took many of the unhealthiest from us in 2020. In principle, therefore, a smaller number of unhealthy people might have been susceptible to COVID-19 in 2021 and 22. High mortality years are often followed by low mortality years. After 2 successive high mortality years, the third year is even more likely to be low mortality. For 2022 to be as bad or somewhat worse than 2020 is thus a big surprise. Last year's milder Omicron variants making 2022's stubbornly high mortality rate even more baffling. All-case mortality is crucial to understand whether public health policies are working. All-cause numbers can also help expose faulty reasoning when overly narrow, overly complicated, or overly clever analysis miss or hide important signals. For example, an analysis which purported to show lockdowns reduced COVID deaths, but which neglected to show other deaths rose even more, would not reflect the totality of the policy's effects. Likewise, a chemotherapy which shrinks tumors but kills patients may be successful in its narrow task, yet fail the larger mission. Most analysts and health authorities studiously ignored all cause over the last 3 years. The all-cause figures show our COVID policies were far from successful. For other purposes, however, it's helpful and even necessary to drill down on specific causes, important signals that can be lost in large groupings. Simpson's paradox, for example, is a common statistical illusion. Few have dug deeper with as much specificity as John Bodine, an engineer from Massachusetts, who gained access to his state's digital death records for the last 8 years. He shows that specific causes of death spike and fall at important moments and periods. CDC data is not organized with such granularity. More on Bodine's analysis in coming weeks. We know that recent years saw an upswing in drug overdoses and suicides, which accelerated the pandemic lockdowns. Although these troubling trends cannot explain the enormous and unprecedented all-case mortality seen above, we should attempt to account for these. Likewise, although COVID-19 did not cause all these record deaths, it was a significant factor. Employment aberration. So we dig deeper. If we remove both COVID-19 and unnatural deaths, homicide, suicide, overdoses, etc., we see a dramatic spike of natural non-COVID-19 deaths among working-age people beginning in the spring and summer of 2021. The CDC then stopped publishing the detailed data breaking out these particular categories. But we know this trend continued. In fact, it got much worse. The life insurance companies told us so. On a December 30th, 2021 video conference with the Indiana Chamber of Commerce, One America CEO Scott Davidson reported with shock. He said, and what we saw just in third quarter, we're seeing it continue into fourth quarter, is that death rates are up 40% over what they were pre-pandemic. 40% is just unheard of. It may not all be COVID on their death certificates, but deaths are up just huge numbers, he said. Several months later, Lincoln National reported its 2021 payouts were $1.4 billion versus $584 million in 2020. It's a 164% rise. As you'll remember seeing in our 3 all-case charts, August, September, and October of 2021 showed a gigantic upward bubble, the worst ever period of concentrated young and middle-aged deaths, at least in modern times. Heart attacks, strokes, pulmonary embolisms, accidents, and many seemingly unexpected sudden deaths, which continued into 2022 and now in 2023. It's true that the late summer and fall period of 2021 coincided with Delta wave in the US, which was more infectious and appeared to be more pathogenic than previous variants. We've suggested the mass vaccination programs may have, by exerting extreme evolutionary pressure, driven convergence into more infectious, vaccine-evaded variants. Brand new research just published in the New England Journal of Medicine continues to bolster our escape variant thesis. Federal officials and the medical establishment, you will recall, argued in 2021 that it was a pandemic of the unvaccinated. Even the Society of Actuaries attempts to explain away its alarming findings by implying that deaths are due to lack of vaccinations. It does so with crude regressions of excess mortality and bulk statewide vaccination totals as of June 30th, 2021. But remember those 520 million vaccine doses. How can you generate far more deaths in 2021, ascribing them to unvaccination, with a dramatically smaller number of unvaccinated people? In 2021, perhaps 20 to 40% of these group life insured were unvaccinated, In 2020, 100% of them were unvaccinated, yet mortality barely rose. The math doesn't come close to working. The 40 to 44 age group, for example, suffered 21.5% more total deaths in 2021 than 2020. This terrible outcome occurred with less than half the so-called susceptible population due to their unvaccinated status. It's difficult to assert robust vaccine effectiveness when both dosed, delivered, and deaths were skyrocketing. On the other hand, the group life insurance data show vaccinated groups may have suffered the worst outcomes. By August, most large and mid-sized companies and organizations across the country had vaccine mandates, and most employees complied, yet those workers suffered extraordinary, indeed total unprecedented death rates in 2021, especially the second half of 2021. Ed Dowd, former BlackRock portfolio manager, points to a crucial peculiarity in his book Cause Unknown. Employed people with group life insurance policies are far healthier than their overall population cohort. They typically die at significantly lower rates, just 34% of overall population. This is an iron actuarial law. In 2021, however, as you can see in the chart directly above, these employed Americans died at excess rates far higher than their larger pool of less healthy peers. We could also point to the fast rising disability as a key factor in the worker shortage. Fed Chairman Powell blames it on long COVID. Once again, however, the timing does not fit that story very well. We could also just point to the fast rising disability as a key factor in the worker shortage. Fed Chairman Powell blames it on long COVID once again. However, the timing doesn't fit it very well. The overgeneralization. In 2020, the vulnerable died of COVID at unusually high rates. In 2021 and 22, COVID continued its assault, but the young, middle-aged, and healthy also died in aberrantly high numbers of something else. These patterns are repeated across high-income developed worlds, the countries of Germany, UK, Japan, South Korea, and Australia. And this is on Collective Spark by Brett Swanson, guest writer. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Kindly support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box.